Before Whit Hale ever tasted the stew, Inez Pike had already ordered the stranger thrown from the cookhouse. The woman stood behind the wood box with one burned hand wrapped in flour sack cloth, her last blue cup clutched to her chest, and 12 hungry men watching like judges. If Inez won that room, Cora Bell would leave Hollow Creek before dark with no supper, no wages, no honest name, and nowhere west that would take her. Then Whit lifted his spoon, tasted the only decent meal his ranch had seen in a month, and asked the question that made Inez's lie dangerous. Who made this? The 12 hands at Hollow Creek Ranch went quiet. Outside, dusk had turned the Wyoming yard copper. Inside, every man had been ready for another supper of burned beans and stringy beef. Instead, the pot in front of them smelled of onions, pepper, clean broth, and dumplings light enough to shame every meal they had swallowed that month. Inez Pike stood by the stove with her black apron tied hard around her waist. "I did, Mr. Hale." Whit looked at her, then he looked at the pot. "You have not seasoned anything but complaint in 3 years, Inez." A few men lowered their faces fast. One coughed into his sleeve. Behind the wood box, the blue cup knocked softly against Cora's boot. Whit turned. She was thin from hard travel, but her back was straight. Her brown hair had come loose under a faded bonnet, and ash dusted the hem of her skirt. Inez's face tightened. "That drifter broke in. I caught her stealing scraps." The woman stood before anyone could drag her up. "I did not steal the stew. I made it." Whit heard the difference. Not pride, not fear, truth spoken by somebody too tired to decorate it. "Name," he said. "Cora Bell." "Where were you bound, Cora Bell?" Her eyes shifted toward the yard, where the stage road ran west into dark brush and nothing else. "Nowhere that will take me." Jory Pike, Inez's nephew, stared at the table. Whit saw him do it, saw the boy's jaw move like he had swallowed a nail. Inez snatched the blue cup from Cora's hand. "She has nowhere because no decent house keeps thieves. Send her off before she sickens your crew." Cora reached for the cup, then stopped herself. That restraint hit Whit harder than tears would have. She had one cup left in the world, and she still would not fight for it under another person's roof. Whit pushed his chair back. "Put the cup on the table," he said. Inez did not move. Whit's voice dropped. "Now." The cup landed with a small hard sound. Cora's eyes followed it like it was a roof beam. Whit pointed to the empty bench near the stove. "Mrs. Vale keeps the west room by the wash shed. You can sleep there tonight with her door across from yours. Tomorrow you cook breakfast in the open. I pay you for the trial, whether I keep you or not." "I am not charity," Cora said. "Good, I'm not offering charity." Inez gave a short laugh. "You will pay a vagrant to poison men." Whit picked up his spoon again and ate another bite of stew. Every hand watched him swallow. "If this is poison," he said, "it is the first decent poison Hollow Creek ever bought." That should have made Cora smile. It almost did. But the look faded before it reached her mouth, and Whit knew the road behind her had taken too much for one joke to return. Mrs. Vale was the blacksmith's widowed sister, broad-shouldered and steady-eyed. She came when Whit sent for her and listened while Cora explained in 6 plain sentences. Cora had answered kitchen notices from Cheyenne to Laramie, each one promising wages until somebody's wife, sister, or cousin wanted the place instead. At Hollow Creek, she had carried a letter from Whit's late aunt, who had once eaten her cooking at a church supper. Inez had taken that letter at the gate before Cora could even step inside. It was the one honest door Cora still had. "Said there was no place," Cora said. "Then she told the stage office I owed board for 2 nights I never slept." Jory Pike stared harder at the table. Whit saw it again. "You saw her come," Whit said to him. Jory's ears reddened. Aunt Inez said she was trouble. That was not the question. The boy said nothing. Cora lifted her chin. "Leave him be. A boy needs wages." Jory flinched at the mercy, more than he had at the accusation. Whit had not eaten at the crew table in 4 years. Not since a cookhouse fire took his younger brother, Matty, in a winter so mean the men had tried to thaw beans over lamp flame. After that, Whit took most meals standing outside or alone in his office. A table full of hungry men felt too much like a thing that could turn to ash. But the next morning, when Cora set coffee on the stove and turned the bacon before it burned, Whit came in and sat. The men noticed. Cora noticed too. She poured his coffee last, not like a servant unsure of rank, but like a cook who had counted cups and hands and knew the room. The chair creaked under Whit, and 3 men looked up as if a rifle had cracked. Cora set a plate before him with 2 corn cakes, a strip of bacon, and a spoonful of beans she had washed twice and warmed with sage. It was not fancy. It was careful. "I did not know if you took sugar," she said. "I don't." "Then I did not waste any." Rusk Tanner snorted into his cup. Whit nearly smiled. Across the room, Inez watched that almost smile like it was theft. She had ruled the cookhouse by making every meal feel scarce. Hungry men argued with one another instead of the woman who held the pantry key. Cora had been in the room less than a day and had already changed how the men listened. That was why Inez feared her. "You do not trust the canned beef," Whit said, watching her set 3 tins aside. "I trust food that tells the truth," Cora said. "Those tins do not." Inez stood at the pantry door with the key ring at her belt. She thinks she knows more than the woman who has fed this ranch for 6 years. Cora did not look away from the stove. "I know enough not to feed men from a tin that pushes back before it is opened." Whit saw the crew shift. They understood that, no fancy proof, no book, just sense. One of the younger hands lowered his fork and looked from the locked pantry to the tins. For the first time, doubt moved across a face Inez had always counted as obedient. For breakfast, Cora fried corn cakes crisp at the edge and soft in the middle. She saved the worst coffee grounds for lye soap and made fresh with what little good supply Inez had not locked away. By the end of the meal, old Rusk Tanner had stopped muttering about drifters and asked if there was another cake. Cora gave him half of hers. Whit saw that too. Later, by the wash shed, he found her scrubbing the stew pot with her burned hand tucked high so the water would not touch it. "Mrs. Vale has salve," he said. "I will ask after the work is done." "The work will still be there when you can close your hand." Cora looked at him then, cautious and searching. "Every place I ever stopped said that. Then they counted the resting as debt." Whit leaned one shoulder against the doorframe and kept his hands where she could see them. Hollow Creek pays wages. It does not collect gratitude. From the cookhouse window, Inez watched Whit keep his distance and still make himself a witness. By supper, every locked shelf had become a warning. "You say that now." "I do." Her face softened by a breath. "You eat like a man who expects supper to vanish." Whit did not answer quickly. Yard sounds filled the space between them. "It did once," he said. Cora's eyes moved to the old scorch mark above the cookhouse lintel. She had noticed it. Of course she had. Cooks noticed what fire had touched. "Then I will not waste your table," she said. That was when Whit felt the danger of wanting her to stay. It was not only because she cooked well. It was the way she looked at damage and thought first of how to keep it from happening again. A woman who had been turned away from too many kitchens did not need a rancher setting feelings on her shoulders before she had a clean wage. So he kept the want quiet and made sure it did not become another debt. So Whit stepped back from the wash shed and said only, "Mrs. Vale will bring salve." Cora nodded, "Thank you." "And Cora." She looked up. "If anyone asks who made breakfast, I will answer before you have to." Her fingers tightened on the rag. For a second, the hard travel in her face opened to plain surprise. "I can answer for myself," she said. "I expect you can. I only mean you will not be left alone with the lie." This time the almost smile reached her mouth. It was small enough to miss if a man was careless. Whit was not careless with it. By noon, Inez made her counterstroke. The stage office sent a boy with a yellow slip folded around Cora's name. Whit read it in the yard while Cora stood beside the wagon wheel. "Bordette," he said. Cora's mouth went white. "I never slept there." "It says you did." "Then it lies." The stage boy shrugged. "Mr. Vale at the office said she cannot buy passage west until it is paid. Mrs. Pike witnessed the debt." Inez came from the cookhouse with her key ring flashing. A woman with debt has no business handling a rancher's food. Two hands by the corral looked away. Debt was a word that worked like rope on the frontier. It could tie a person to a place, close doors, and make honest people sound dirty. Cora knew it. Her shoulders went still, but Whit saw her thumb rub the bandage on her palm until the cloth shifted. "How much?" Whit asked. The stage boy named a sum big enough to be cruel and small enough to sound believable. "For 2 nights," Whit said. "Board, lamp, oil, supper, stable, storage." Cora gave one bitter breath. "I slept under the freight awning and ate half a biscuit I brought from Medicine Bow." The boy's face flickered. He had not known that, or he had not wanted to know. Inez folded her arms. Drifters always have a finer story than their bill. Rusk Tanner's hand stopped halfway to his hat. Two newer men looked at Cora as if the word debt had changed her face. Cora saw it happen, and that hurt worse than the paper. They had known hunger. They had also known thieves. Inez counted on the space between those two things. Whit looked at Cora. "I can pay it and put you on tomorrow's stage." For the first time, hurt broke clean through her control. "And then every town west will know I left owing money I never owed." "Then I will not pay a lie." "The buyer comes tomorrow," Inez said. "Mr. Danner will not eat from a thief's hand. Lose that beef price and remember I warned you." "By tomorrow night," Inez said, "every man here will know whether Mr. Hale chose a cook or a thief, and Mr. Danner will price the herd accordingly." Whit folded the yellow slip once, then again. "Mrs. Pike unlocked the pantry." "No." Every hand in the yard heard it. Whit went still. That was not a request. Inez's smile was small and mean. "Your aunt gave me charge of provisions before she died. You want supper tomorrow, you will get it through me." Cora turned toward the road. Whit saw her calculate the distance. No fare, no bedroll, no honest name at the stage office. Nowhere left, just as she had said. "I can walk before dark," she said. "You can," Whit answered. The words cost him. "Or you can stay and cook with everyone watching. No debt. No hidden corner. If after the buyer's supper you want the road, I will put your wages in your hand and ask Mrs. Vale to witness it." Inez laughed. "Listen to him dress ruin in Sunday clothes. He will tire of defending you by sunup, girl." Cora did not answer Inez. She kept looking at Whit. "Why?" she asked. He could have said the ranch needed a cook. That was true. He could have said Inez had overreached. That was true too. But Cora had asked why as if she expected the honest answer to hurt. "Because last night every man here ate from your hands and lived better for it," Whit said. "Because you were hungry and fed other people first. Because if Hollow Creek cannot tell the difference between that and theft, then the ranch deserves to go hungry." The yard held its breath. Desire moved through Whit like a dangerous warmth. Not only desire for Cora's face, though he had noticed the gray in her eyes and the way lamplight found it. Desire for the kind of home that could be made by a woman who heard a lie and answered with work. Cora looked down first. That is a heavy thing to say to a woman with no trunk. "Then I will not ask you to carry it yet." Cora looked at the cookhouse, then at the men who had eaten from her pot, then at Jory Pike, who could not meet her eyes. "If I leave," she said, "she serves those tins." Whit did not soften the truth. "Likely." Cora lifted her burned hand and flexed it once. "Then I stay until supper." For more clean Wild West stories where truth fights rumor, subscribe and ride along. Inez heard the decision and moved fast. That night Cora's bedroll disappeared from Mrs. Vale's wash shed. So did the small packet of pepper she had bought with her last coin. The next morning, the good flour barrel was locked. The dried onions were gone. The only meat left outside the pantry was gray at the edges. Cora stood in the cookhouse doorway and laughed once. Whit had never heard a more tired sound. "Is that surrender?" he asked. "No, that is me learning she is afraid." She took a basket and went to the kitchen garden behind the smokehouse. It had been neglected so long the weeds were nearly proud of themselves. In 20 minutes she had dug wild onions, 2 carrots gone forked but usable, and a handful of sage. She sent Rusk Tanner to the springhouse for cold cream and made him feel chosen instead of ordered. The men followed her instructions badly at first. They knew ropes, brands, gates, and weather, not where a clean towel lived. Cora did not scold, she pointed. "Mr. Tanner, if you peel those carrots like fence posts, we will have nothing left but orange air." "Never peeled for a lady cook," he muttered. "Then peel for your own supper." He grinned and tried again. Whit watched from the doorway until she caught him. "If you stand there looking solemn, I will hand you a knife too," she said. "I own the ranch." "Then you can afford to peel badly." The crew laughed. Whit took the knife. His first carrot came out ridged and pitiful, and Cora's look was not quite laughter, not yet courtship, but alive. Inez saw that too. At the pantry door, Inez did not shout. She smiled at the men peeling carrots and said, "Laugh now. Buyers do not pay for ranches that let strays command the kitchen." By mid-morning, Jory Pike slipped through the back door with 2 tins under his coat. Cora saw him in the polished side of the coffee pot. "Set them down," she said. He froze. "I am not going to shout," she said, "but I will not cook what you hide." Jory set the tins on the table. His hands shook. "Aunt said to put these with your pot. Said Mr. Danner would spit it out and Mr. Hale would run you off." Whit came in behind him. Jory closed his eyes as if the whole roof had fallen. "Why?" Whit asked. Jory swallowed. "She gets $1 a crate from Lyle's boarding wagon for taking old tins. If she loses this place, Uncle Lyle loses the route. I lose my freight wages." Jory looked toward the yard where Lyle's wagon tracks still cut through the dust. Telling the truth would not only anger Inez. It would burn the little work his uncle had promised him. Cora looked at the boy's patched sleeve. She understood poverty too well to hate him easily, but mercy did not mean silence. "You saw me turned away," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You saw her take my letter." "Yes, ma'am." "Will you say that where men can hear?" Jory looked at the floor. "She'll turn me out." "Maybe," Cora said, "but if those tins go into the pot, men may fall sick and your aunt will hang that on me. Then where do I go?" The boy had no answer. Whit did. "If you tell truth, I will see you paid for honest hauling for 1 month while you find better work. If you lie, you leave Hollow Creek tonight with Lyle's tins." Jory nodded, miserable. Cora looked at Whit sharply. "Do not buy his truth so rich he can sell it back later." Jory winced. Whit accepted the rebuke. Fair. 1 month of work watched by Rusk, paid only for loads delivered clean. No favors, no hiding. "And he says what he saw before the men," Cora said. Jory rubbed both hands down his vest. "Aunt Inez will say I stole." "Maybe," Cora said. "Then you will learn what a lie feels like from my side." The boy's eyes filled, but he did not cry. Cora would not have trusted tears anyway. She trusted that he stayed when leaving was easier. Whit understood then that Cora was merciful, which was harder than soft. Mercy asked for repair. The buyer arrived near sundown in a clean black coat and a hat too fine for a cattle yard. Mr. Danner brought 2 clerks, 1 scale man, and the cool look of somebody who could lower a herd price by smelling weakness. Inez had dressed in her best black apron. The pantry keys rode at her waist like medals. "Supper is ready," she announced. Cora stood at the stove with flour on her cheek and her blue cup back on the shelf where Mrs. Vale had put it for safekeeping. There were 2 pots. One held her stew, built from honest scraps, garden roots, fresh dumplings, and the last good beef Whit had ordered cut under his own eye. The other sat near Inez, heavy and sour-smelling under a lid. Inez pointed to the sour pot. "That is Miss Bell's work." Cora did not move. Whit felt every man tense. If he spoke now, some would say he saved her. If Cora spoke, the ranch would have to decide whether it could hear her. So he waited, though it scraped him raw. Cora picked up a ladle and carried both pots out into the yard. "Eat in the open," she said. "Let the cattle buyer smell what each woman claims." Inez's face flushed. "You insolent stray." "No," Cora said, "a cook." No one laughed. That was the first wound in Inez's command. The men who had smirked at drifters now stood with their bowls held low, waiting to see which woman had lied. That word moved through the men like heat. She set the sour pot on a crate and the clean pot on the ground beside it. Then she placed the 2 tins Jory had brought in front of Mr. Danner. Their tops were stained. One bore a small black triangle scratched into the metal. "Mrs. Pike marks her lock shelf tins this way," Cora said. "She told Jory to put them in my pot. He brought them to me instead." Inez lunged for the tins. Cora stepped between her and the crate, burned hands shaking but up. "Jory," she said. The boy looked at his aunt. Inez's eyes promised ruin. Then he looked at Cora's empty sleeve where her bedroll should have been tied, at the men waiting with bowls, and at Whit, who had risked a herd price by staying silent. "It's true," Jory said. His voice cracked, but it carried. "Aunt Inez locked the good stores. She told me to switch the bad tins into Miss Bell's pot and say she stole them." Inez snapped her fingers at 2 hands near the corral. "Take those tins away." Neither man moved. One of them looked at Cora instead. Mr. Danner took 1 step back from the sour pot. Inez changed tactics fast. "The boy is confused." She bewitched him with pity. "Mr. Hale, are you letting a tramp ruin a 6-year account?" She grabbed the key ring from her belt and turned toward the pantry, but Cora saw what she wanted. The blue cup sat near the ash barrel. Inez snatched it and lifted her arm to throw it into the coals. Cora caught her wrist. "Not hard, not cruel, just enough." "You do not get the last thing I own," Cora said. The yard went silent. Whit stepped forward then. Mrs. Pike put the cup down. Inez tried to wrench free. Cora held on. Her burned hand must have screamed, but she did not let go until the cup was safe on the table. Rusk Tanner took off his hat. Then he picked up his bowl, walked past Inez's sour pot, and held it out to Cora's clean one. "Cook," he said, "if you are serving." One by one the men followed. Mr. Danner watched the line form. "Mr. Hale, I came to price cattle, not settle kitchen quarrels." "Then price this," Whit said. "A ranch that feeds its men from honest hands keeps better cattle than one that buys rotten tins for $1 back." The buyer looked at the sour pot, at the scratched tins, at the men lined behind Cora, and at Inez with the key ring still in her fist. "I will take the herd," he said, "but I will not take supper from that pot." Danner turned to his clerk. "Strike Lyle's boarding wagon from our supply stops. If this is what he sells through Mrs. Pike, I want no account tied to mine." That broke Inez more than shouting could have. Her contract had lived in obedience. It died when hungry men chose where to stand. Whit held out his hand. "Keys." Inez clutched them. "Your aunt gave these to me." "My aunt trusted you to feed this ranch. You used that trust to starve it for profit. Keys." Inez looked to Jory. The boy did not move toward her. For 6 years, those keys had made men lower their eyes. Now every eye in the yard stayed lifted. Mrs. Vale stepped forward with an empty flour sack. "The bad tins go in here. Jory can haul them back to Lyle's wagon at dawn. He can tell every stop why Hollow Creek returned them." Jory nodded, pale but steady. "Yes, ma'am." That was his cost. Not tears, not sorry. A road full of telling the truth to men who knew his uncle. Inez dropped the keys into Whit's palm. The sound was small, the loss was not. Whit handed the keys to Cora. She stared at them as if they were burning. "No," she said softly, "not yet." For a sharp second, Whit feared he had pushed too far. Cora lifted the keys and placed them in Mrs. Vale's hand instead. "Tonight, witness them. Tomorrow, I take them with wages written and the crew present." Whit's throat tightened. She was not begging for trust. She was building it where it could stand. "Tomorrow then," he said. Inez left Hollow Creek before breakfast, sitting beside Lyle on the boarding wagon with no pantry account, no ranch contract, and no nephew willing to lie for her. No one waved. Jory rode behind with the spoiled tins and a face set hard toward repair. By noon, a new hook had been hammered into the long table rail. Rusk Tanner had done it without being asked. Mrs. Vale had polished the blue enamel cup until the chipped rim shone clean. Whit set Cora's wages beside it in full view of the hands, counted coin by coin, then stepped back. "Cora Bell," he said, "Hollow Creek asks you to cook by your own name. Not hidden, not owing, not kept." Cora looked at the road. It was still there. It would always be there. For the first time in months, it did not look like the only honest thing. "And if I choose to leave later," she asked. "Then you leave paid." "And if I choose to stay?" Whit's eyes held hers. "Then I ask if I may court you proper after supper tomorrow, not before your answer, not instead of your wages." The crew pretended not to listen and failed badly. Cora took the blue cup in both hands. Her burned palm was wrapped clean. She lifted the cup to the new hook and hung it there herself. "Tomorrow's supper is beef stew," she said, "with dumplings if Mr. Tanner stops eating the flour." The men laughed, and the sound filled the cookhouse without swallowing her. Whit sat at the long table, where fire had once taken too much, and where Cora had made room for herself without stealing an inch. Cora set a bowl before him last. "Mr. Hale," she said, "you may ask after supper tomorrow." Whit smiled like a man hearing grace in plain words. Cora touched the blue cup once, making sure it held. Then she turned back to the stove as the cook of Hollow Creek Ranch with her wages paid, her name spoken, and her answer still her own. Whit sat at the long table, not by the door, not in his office, but in the place where grief had once emptied him and Cora had made room again. The cup stayed on its hook, plain and chipped in hers. Subscribe for more clean romantic Wild West stories where brave women, honest work, and second chances find a home.